This week on Household History, we'll wake up to the various types of alarm clocks throughout the last 2 millennia, including people whose job it was to go around knocking on people's doors. And we'll go back to a time before the invention of the modern-day deodorant stick to see what was used, if anything at all. They're just about the worst part of anyone's day, yet to go without one could mean that you won't have a job. Some modern-day alarm clocks violently wake users up by shaking their bed, or sometimes jolting them out of their warm, soft bed with loud bells or radio static. Other clocks start ringing softly and gradually get louder to gently wake the user up. Some use sight, others use sounds. Whatever the case may be, one would be hard-pressed to find a household without this fiendish device. But how did it get into our collective households, even becoming a feature on our phones that everyone has in their pockets? The invention of the alarm clock may begin with Plato, the Athenian philosopher who is known for his ways of thinking and his written works. It is believed that when he had to wake himself up in order to give lectures in the very early mornings, he invented and used a type of water clock that essentially built up water and sounded a whistle that resembled a bird's repetitive chirping. Then the water would drop into a pot where it could be reused. Rumor has it he also made his academy students use this type of alarm when they overslept. While there were many types of different alarms that were created throughout history, such as the water clock invented by Ctesibius during the 2nd century BC in Egypt, and the German-made clocks of the 15th and 16th century, the next major time period for the mass production of alarm clocks took place during the Industrial Revolution that occurred in Europe and the US between 1760 and roughly 1830. It was during this time that working hours became very strict, and the advancement of alarm clocks were indicative of that period. Chiming clocks were rampant in city streets during the time, as were work whistles that would be loud enough for the workers who lived close enough to the buildings that they worked in. In England and Ireland, there existed a whole new type of work. This profession was called a knocker-upper, and it was the job of these people to go around knocking on the windows and doors of the people who needed to wake up at a specific time. These knocker-uppers would be paid weekly and would mainly be comprised of the elderly. However, some police patrolmen would get a small bonus if they performed the duty in addition to the elderly. Knocker-uppers would write with chalk on the doors and walls of houses to indicate what time the people inside would need to be awakened. When alarm clocks eventually were made to become more affordable and more widely spread, this profession slowly died out, and by the 1920s it was completely eradicated. In 1876, a man named Seth Thomas, with a clock company based out of New York, patented the first mass-produced alarm clock. These clocks were inexpensive to manufacture, and soon after this, clock manufacturers began to pop up everywhere, including the Western Clock Manufacturing Company in 1888. They're known for making their Big Ben series of clocks seen here, and in 1931 they merged with the Seth Thomas Clock Company. Both companies went on to become divisions of General Time Corporation, and in 1959, West Clocks, as they were known at that point, made a clock with a feature known as a drowse alarm, or as we all know it currently, the snooze button. By this time, alarm clocks were a way of life and remains a staple of our current day. From the 1970s and up, alarm clocks were adapted into certain phone models that also featured a radio dial, and by the time cell phones came around, it seemed like a no-brainer to include them. We've come a long way from chiming clocks in city streets, which can still be heard today, but only time will tell where the advancement of technology will take us and wake us in the years to come. The modern-day deodorant stick. It's nearly impossible to go without some form of it, and people will surely take notice if you do. Currently, there are hundreds of brands and scents to choose from. If you head to your nearest department store, you'll see the many choices for yourself. But even as recent as just 60 years ago, there were only a handful of brands to choose from, and it all began, where else, but in ancient Egypt. While it's impossible to determine the time period, it is said that the ancient Egyptians would bathe frequently. When bathing, they would use oils and floral scents in their water and would rub the oils and scents directly to their underarms. Egyptian women would place scented waxes or even scented animal fats onto their head and let it melt and drip down as the day went on in the hot desert heat. People of the time were generally smelling much better than previously thought. The advent of the bath eventually made its way into Greece, with the poet Homer allegedly proclaiming that the proper house host would have a bath ready for his house guests. This places the time period around the 12th and 8th century BC that bathing was still a popular activity. Not long after this time, the Romans took this bathing concept and ran with it, not only bathing their bodies in scented waters, but dousing their clothes in it and washing their horses in it as well. By roughly 600 BC, soap had been invented by the seafaring Phoenicians out of Greece, and the invention was well known in Europe at the time. In the year 789 in Baghdad, there was a man born by the nickname of Ziryab, and several sources claim that he had a fondness for hygiene, among many other things. It is said that he essentially created the first kind of deodorant stick specifically placed under the arms, but soon most of the world would decline cleanliness in favor of being closer in line to their religious beliefs. It was during the Middle Ages that everything changed. Without getting too far in what people wanted to accomplish in the Middle Ages, it was quite a serious time period. Europeans migrated to other parts of the country, populations declined, and wars were started. The rise of religious beliefs started here, and with it, based on a few different sources, the idea that being in the nude was something to be looked down upon became prominent. Bathing essentially took a backseat to colognes and other masking fragrances. It became less important to smell good during this time. The Middle Ages lasted roughly 1,000 years from the 5th to 15th century, and although there are many great and wonderful works from it, including art and architecture, it is here that most people think about our ancestors not smelling so great, and it's true. Using scented fragrances to mask odors remained a part of life well up into the 19th century, and it is in Philadelphia in 1888 that the world was impacted once more by deodorants. If you would like to learn more about the Middle Ages and its impact, there are links in the description for you to click on. Created by an unknown inventor, Mum became the first commercialized underarm deodorant. It was a type of cream that would be applied directly to the underarm, but it certainly wasn't a perfect product by any means. Inspired by the ballpoint pen, Mum eventually went on to create the roll-on deodorant known as Ban. This brand is still found on store shelves to this day. Though some sources claim the inventor of Mum is a woman named Edna Murphy, it is impossible, as she was born in 1887 in the city of Cincinnati, and also was the creator of a rival antiperspirant called Odor Oh No, and by 1920 she heavily influenced the deodorant marketing world by essentially insulting a woman's intelligence. Fast forwarding to the 1960s when spray antiperspirants were invented, it is here that many brands were taking off in sales, leading to competition and the addition of lesser-known brands to crop up on store shelves. Today, deodorants are an $18 billion a year business, and in the coming centuries, who knows what will follow in the advancements of making everyone smell just a little better. If you have an idea of something you want us to cover on the show, leave a comment below or email us at householdhistory@gmail.com. You will be mentioned if we choose your topic for a future episode. Thank you for watching.